watch WoWcast. Let's do this, boys. I'm still glad. I like WoWcast. Let's go. Hold up. I need to sit down for this. This is serious business. Dude, Queen Ansurek looks badass. I don't know why people are so upset about it. She looks badass to me.
Welcome to a special edition of WoWcast, and thank you so much for joining us. Launch is right around the corner, and today we are joined by a few incredible guests to share how dungeons, raids, and PvP has evolved, as well as new features like delves and warbands. Please introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm Laura Sardinia. I'm lead UX designer in the WoW team.
Hey, I'm Morgan Day, one of the associate game directors on World of Warcraft.
And I'm John Mark Campbell. I'm a lead gameplay engineer on World of Warcraft.
How has the team been approaching what's waiting for players at max level for the War Within?
As we've been talking about, the content that players will be experiencing once they reach the end game, there's really been three main pillars we've been focusing on. The first is variety. We want to make sure that there's all kinds of activities for you to do, whether it be in the outdoor world or with some of our new features like delves that are really going to add some new variety for those players. Additionally, we really want to focus on progression and giving players new challenges to try to overcome in the end game. And finally, the story and making sure that that narrative is front and center. Now, whether that's tied into some of these features and some of the content that we built there, or maybe it's focused on the end game campaign that is going to be built out as players progress as well. Something that I think is going to be really transformative and I'm excited about for the War Within is one of our major features, Warbands. If you aren't familiar, this is a feature that really ties all your characters together. And really this is our opportunity to make sure that we're really respecting the time of the player behind the keyboard and not constantly asking you to, maybe re-earn something on one character that you've already earned.
Dude, I know Warbands have had a number of problems and I realize that. How you doing, by the way, bro? OG Tag, how you doing, fam? I know warbands have not worked and there's been a lot of problems with it, but in theory, once all of the shit has been sorted out, it cannot be stated enough just how much of a W this is. And if you look at how Blizzard responds to feedback on it, Blizzard announced a few days ago that they confirmed that not all appearances will be available when you kill bosses and stuff. So you would have to kill bosses multiple times in order for you to collect all of the appearances of the bosses. And then people obviously sort of went, wait, what the hell is this? Why should I just keep doing the same bosses over and over again? And if I'm not mistaken, Blizzard actually said that they'll be looking into it. So they are going to pay attention to it. Which to me, dude, this is going to be such a mega feature moving forward. Or for quests, yes, sorry. Specifically quest bosses, excuse me. So the quests that you get that give you as a reward, that give you the appearances, Blizzard is saying that they're looking into those. Realistically speaking, warbands were always going to fail at launch, then patch into quality. We all know how changes like this work, so I'm not even disappointed. No, that's why I didn't make a big deal out of it. Just to be fair, I never made a video on the warbands sucking, because fundamentally, you're talking about structurally one of the largest changes ever made to World of Warcraft. But you're talking about a thing that you're literally building from the ground up to try and overcome, almost 2 decades of architecture in World of Warcraft? Anyone that expected that feature to work 100% at the time of launch was delusional. We're not talking about implementing Pac-Man into fucking MS-DOS. We're talking about changing the structure and architecture of the game. That was always going to be a problem. So the only issue as of right now, too, is the gear that is class-specific drops, not tokens, that are not auto-added and need the class to obtain the MOG. I do think they're going to be changing that at some point.
We earned on another one. That's all
John, how you doing, bro?
The War Within, which is really exciting.
John Mark, can you tell us more about the significant undertakings that Warbands is about?
Yeah, it's no easy task to reimagine in a modern context what we've done over the past 20 years. I think, Morgan, at BlizzCon, you called this several features in a trench coat.
Yeah.
And it's very true. In a nutshell, it's really a philosophical shift in how we approach the game. Instead of being from a character focus, we're taking a step back and approaching it more from what the players accomplished over the entire time that they've played the game. Historically, we've added on pieces to individual systems from the...
There's one thing that I should mention here, and I can already see this turning into one hell of a react. But there is one thing that I should mention here that is super important, and that is Warbands will remove a lot of the replayability of World of Warcraft. Even if you made the argument, dude, no one liked replaying WoW for some of that shit, like reputations, like transmogs and all the rest of it, that was still replayability, right? It still sent people out into the world to have to redo things in order to collect those appearances that they may or may not want on their alts. Whereas that's going away entirely. And that's a good thing. I'm not for a second here saying, oh, Blizzard should really figure out. That is a good thing. What Blizzard does need to figure out now is how do you fill that gap? Right? How do you fill that up with more content? Because Delves is one step in the right direction, but I fear there's probably they're gonna need to have a lot more content that fills that gap for players that might be replaying for certain things. I love my alts and like the difference in play when I use them. Berkel J, that's not what I'm talking about. Remember, in the past, you would switch to an alt, right? And then, yes, you would do dungeons on that alt and you would have fun. You would do raids on that alt and you would have fun. But once you've done all the dungeons, you've done all the raids, and now there's nothing to do, you might go out and you might go farm an appearance on a specific, from a specific dungeon or from a specific raid or something like that. That's what we call filling the daytime. People don't often think of that as an important thing, but it is something you're doing that's keeping you busy in the game. Once there's no reason to go and do that thing in the game, it can very quickly lead to a place where, well, what do I do now? Right? I have no appearances to collect. I've already unlocked all of these appearances on my main, and I don't have any dungeons left. I could level another character, but I don't really want to level another character. So you're going to have more content weaved into it that is doable so that people have something to do. It's a different problem to solve, and arguably a much more fun problem to solve, because all you need to do is make more content, and people will love that. Who doesn't want more content?
The engineering side to support features going into expansions. But if we could wave a magic wand and go back 20 years ago, knowing where we're headed today, likely we would have organized those things very differently from an engineering perspective.
Yeah, and I really feel like this is easily one of the largest undertakings that our engineering team has had to develop for an expansion. We always used to look at updates to future patches where let's make this a little bit easier for your alt to catch up or earn some progression there, where now that is something that we're really architecting from the forefront and really beginning the conversation with that.
I think when it's all said and done, every engineering sub-team is going to have touched this feature.
So what value do Warbands bring?
It's all about being able to transfer stuff between your characters. If you have items that you want to send from one character to the other, you just put it in the Warband bank. If you have currency that you want to send from one character to the other, you can just...
I wonder, do you think, would it even be useful, but do you think we could get to a place where you don't even have to put it into a special bank? It's just available. If you collect something, it's just there. You log into an alt and it is just there for you to use whatever, right? So you don't have to summon a bank and put it inside the bank. You log on, open the bags, and you have a tab for your character and all of the other characters, and you just get whatever the fuck you want. Is that something that Blizzard wants to do? Is this sort of protecting the fantasy of it? Because you do have to remember, this is still a game. And while there's a lot of things that they might do because it makes sense from an accessibility standpoint, you still have to respect the fact that there is a story here and there is a world. And while your characters are all part of the same war band, They're not the same character, right? And so the argument there could be, well, we don't want to make everything that connected because we want to preserve this idea of this is still you playing. Of your content, I absolutely love your narration style, based lore and speculation creator, amazing content depth. Alexandru, thank you so much. Really appreciate you, fam. Welcome to the stream. Thank you. Holy, what are you saying? Because you keep tagging me. I think this is fine, to be honest. What you're asking is too much work, Accolonn. There is no such thing. What you're asking is too much work. Go fuck yourself. I pay them to do this work. I will ask for whatever the hell I want, and they will deliver it because that's why I pay them. If they don't want to do too much work, they should stop charging me for the game. It's as simple as that. Dance TV, how you doing, bro? You've been a spark of joy in my life. Dude, I am grateful to hear that. If I can bring a smile to your faces, that's all I really give a fuck about. That's why I exist. So thank you for that. Thank you. Yeah, the heirlooms debacle is pretty ass. I had a collection of perfectly chanted gemmed heirlooms to move tune to tune. Now I have to do it every time for every tune. So much for leveling. Because I have to say, I think heirlooms, I don't know how the heirlooms are in the Warband feature right now, but the heirloom system has just fundamentally been an ass system for me from day one. The whole idea that you have to go to a specific NPC to buy the heirlooms, and then it has all of the heirlooms available. I think now you can finally filter it so that, I don't know, I haven't bought heirlooms in a very long time, but back in the day, you couldn't even filter to see which ones do I have and which ones do I not. So they were just all there. It was just such a boring thing. And then you have to buy different things because different things unlock different fucking heirlooms. And it's like, bro, come on. Like, just give me the ability to buy the heirloom. Like, just straight up. I just want to buy the heirloom. I don't want to do math. Like, I don't want to write down all the amounts of this I need for the amount of that I need. Like, just please. I want this heirloom. Give me this heirloom. Let me buy this. So I think the heirloom system has pretty much always been ass. And it really fucking tanked the second all of the XP bonuses went away. Because that was the most fun part of the heirlooms. Sacrifice some power, but just level like a fucking crazy person. I liked it when it was first implemented in terms of their effects. They just keep ruining them step by step. Now they're mostly useless. I wonder why they're doing that. Because you are right. It's lost a lot of its power. Filters, but I'll tell you, you already have specific ones.
Just grab it directly from all the characters that are on your account. Or if you're a druid and you're going through one of the old raids and you get a piece of plate gear, your warrior can just equip it.
Yeah, one of the things I love about it is the shared renown, right? Like there's so much reputation that I'm gaining across my characters that will all be combined and consolidated on one account-wide reputation there. And there's a lot of fun stuff that also enables when it comes to like trying to find, more variety in the way I approach the game. For instance, I was leveling, I think, my second character on the beta recently, and I made sure to go out and turn Warband questing on so that I saw all the quests that I already completed. It's a little bit less opaque, so it's kind of transparent, and that way you know
that's quite nice.
Okay, I've done that quest on one of my other characters, so I can kind of cherry pick all the reputation from quests that I haven't completed yet. Something else when it comes to maybe gearing that new character. There's actually a new type of item called Warbound Until Equipped, or WOO. This is a new item that will drop in all kinds of endgame content, including things like Mythic Plus and Raids, where these will be bonus drops, where they'll drop slightly lower item level where you might have earned that reward, and then you can put that in your bank or send it to one of your alts, and actually, once you equip it on one of your characters, then it will bind to that character. So the fact
I love this system because it somehow grants rewards even if it's not a straight up reward for the character that you're playing. And also, it might actually incentivize people to level alts, right? So imagine you have, for example, Andrew, how you doing, bro? Imagine if you had, for example, an alt that oh, you have a player that's just playing a main, but they're getting all of these glaives and leather gear that is equipped, warband until equipped, then at some point they might go, dude, I have all this gear. I may as well just make a fucking demon hunter and check it out. Right? So it gives you a little bit of that incentive of going, oh, wait, I can level my character and already be nicely geared. Like, let's go. I like that. And lol, I absolutely agree with you. I think WoW Remix, I think Mist of Pandaria Remix should close down and immediately reopen and become a permanent feature. From this moment forward, I want to level all my characters in WoW Remix. It's a lot more fun. And I don't see why we can't just level with WoW Remix. Because leveling in World of Warcraft is ass. At least for me. I hate leveling now.
The fact that it binds to the warband means we can be really generous with that gear as we're dropping for ults.
I imagine as part of this overhaul that it's led to some unique challenges with the UI.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. UI revamp continues, and Warbands was a great opportunity for us to revamp the character select. Last time when we did a big entry screen update was during Shadowlands. So with Warbands, we did a whole big user experience revamp there. We kept the right side list, but now you can drag and drop much easier your characters, and we have a favorite section there.
That is actually, unironically, the greatest change in the War Within. Like, if this was the only change that happened in the War Within, no new story, no new nothing, it would have been worth. Being able to drag and drop your characters in the right fucking order. Dude, the fact that we were stuck with those little arrows that you had to click up and down for so long, what a change.
Which is really cool because they're all cross-helm characters that you can have. So you don't need to be back and forth choosing characters. They're all going to be there for you very, very easy. And also the tooltips are all new. Now you just mouse over and it's all there for you. So pretty great improvements overall. And also the new bank for your Warband characters. So a lot of good improvements that we wanted to make sure it feels natural to play as, and it just feels great. That's what a good UI should be, so yeah, that's what we're looking for.
There's a lot of functionality out of that too, like you can craft straight out of your Warband bank, so...
Spurk aside, you must be new here. Very happy to have you, but it has always been Orc, and it has always been Warlock, sir. Always. Since the very first character I leveled all the way back at the end of Vanilla, I have never switched away from my Warlock. Granted, when I first leveled it, it was a human, because all my friends were Alliance, and they were like, dude, just the Alliance is the best. I wanted to go Horde because I played Warcraft 3, and Orc was my favorite faction in Warcraft 3. And so the second I could, I convinced my friends to switch from Alliance to Horde. And then I became an Orc, and I've never switched. It is just my favorite. Hands down. Oniket, how you doing, brother?
You can just dump all that stuff in your Warband bank, and one of your other characters who might be able to use that profession stuff will then be able to access it much more quickly. You don't have to mail it around, and it's really looking to streamline a lot of those experiences.
For Mythic Plus runners or dungeons, any kind of activity that requires a group, we also revamped that left panel, the little ear pane that you push it out. You can now apply raid markers much easier. You can also assign different folks in your group to do so, which before wasn't that easy. And also,
a big W for this would be if they could make that little bar where you apply markers, if they could make that a free floating bar. Because that's what I used to do with Alv UI. Just, you put the bar right below your character, so you can just very quickly click it to mark stuff. Going to the side, it's very far to the fucking side.
So you can change very easily as well the difficulty of the instance.
One of the other things I love that we added is hubs, right? So on the main map, there's often, as you are progressing in the end game, there's all kinds of content that might be really consolidated in one area, and sometimes it's like, oh, there's so much stuff here, and it makes the map feel like it might have a little bit of clutter on it. So we now have a way to kind of consolidate some of that.
The hubs, as Morgan was explaining, when you get in the War Within, you're gonna see this castle city icon.
That is That is crazy cool. I know this is literally just like basically doesn't impact gameplay at all. I realize that. But this is fucking cool. So many times you see a bunch of quests in one spot and you have no idea like what's actually going on there. This is cool. I like this. I like this.
The biggest one, when you click on it, you can see the city map. And one of the technologies that we want to add, the hub gonna prioritize for you what is the most important content for you to do. Of course, you can choose to do something else, but we want to clean up the surroundings of hubs and main cities. So that's the kind of tech that we're looking into UI as well, and we want to evolve and get players' feedback. Also, for the end game, we have a new type of quest that's called meta quests, but those are end game important repeatable quests, and then they are the classic exclamation mark, above the NPC heads, but it's blue because it reminds of the old dailies, but you're gonna have spikes around it, so that's like, I should check this out. Yeah, so the hub when there's something available as a meta quest for that week, the hub will show that to players, so that's something that you should do. If you don't...
Someone said it in chat just now, and I absolutely agree with you. These kinds of little things showcase one large truth. Whoever is making these changes is actually playing the game. In the past, one of the biggest complaints that we've had with World of Warcraft is sometimes changes would happen and all of the players of the game would be like, who the fuck is this for? This wasn't a problem for anyone, or like no one wanted this. Why are you doing this? And Blizzard would just be like, you think you do, but you don't. Right? And then that would just be the end of the discussion until 2 expansions later when Blizzard finally goes, oh, never mind, we've changed this. This says to you that these developers are playing the game and they are running into problems. They're running into a lack of data, a lack of information. And they immediately thought, how can I make this information a lot more like accessible so that the player can see it instantly? I love this because it means that we're going to see more of this happening in the future.
Don't have too much time, you probably should prioritize those because they give very, very good in-game rewards. So that's the kind of technology that UI is trying to help players.
Yeah.
So someone said, I hope you might be right. Let me just explain why I know for a fact that these kinds of changes hint at developers playing the game. These are not the kind of things that players would ask for. Not because players don't want it, but a player might say, I want more visibility, right? Or I can't see all of the quests in town. But what they actually mean is they don't know exactly what is available in town, right? Or they might not complain about it at all. Like, I've never thought about making a complaint about not being able to see what quests are available in a specific town. I've never even thought about it, even though it has been an annoyance. When I just saw them showcasing this, I was like, fuck, this is going to make my life so much easier if I can just hover over an area and instantly see what quests are available there. You wouldn't know this unless you are a developer playing the game and thinking from that perspective of, okay, what do I miss in the game that I can put in the game to make the game easier to read? You wouldn't think of this if you're just the developer making the game for the players, because the players will never ask for this. They wouldn't even know what to fucking ask for. Like, what are you asking for on the forums there? Make a town that shows me all the quests. Like that, how would that even translate? You have to play the game to understand what players want. Very true. Blue Shader, how you doing, brother? I should give his RPG book, Ouroboros Coils of the Serpent, a read, and maybe some hints towards Wildhor. I still want to read that, by the way.
That's really helpful.
You might be coming back, or you're veteran players, or you just want to, do the easiest thing for the week, and that's going to be out there on the map for you, so you don't have to go back to the icon soup.
Where's how you doing, brother?
Extra quality of life improvements to the UI?
Sure, I've seen a lot of the community very happy about the search bars, so we keep adding those. With Warbands, we have the search bar there as well. In Dragonfly, we had the search in the options menu. Professions, of course, if you're searching for something specific. Bags, we added that in Dragonfly.
I don't know how the professions are going to work. But I will say this, and this may be a super unpopular opinion. I didn't like professions before Dragonflight. I hate professions now. Like, I fucking despise professions in Dragonflight. It was just like, dude, the amount of grind to get my profession maxed out, I gave up. I was like, fuck this. I don't care. I'm not doing this every day. Like, this is nuts. I can't be asked, because it constantly wants you to travel all over the world to create certain things. And then you need special items that you can't get from the world. You have to buy it from the auction house. And I was just like, dude, I'm happy to travel all over the world to craft things. I'm happy to buy stuff off the auction house. But then I at least want to get to max level at some point, and actually make stuff that is worthwhile. I don't want to be doing this. Yeah, the other problem was confusing. Like, maybe I'm just not fucking smart enough. Maybe I'm way too stupid. But to this day, I do not understand the professions of WoW. I don't know how anything fucking works. It's just like, well, I fine. The lady says craft something. I craft the thing that she tells me. I don't know why I'm doing it. I don't know what I'm supposed to level first, last. None of that makes sense to me.
Dragonflight and the talents. But now the spellbook is getting a whole revamp, and it's so good to have a search bar there. The spellbook looks beautiful now. Like, you can have 2 pages, and that way you don't have to paginate as much.
I like this, by the way.
But if you really prefer one pane, there is an icon at the top, which is the collapse one. It comes back to the original classic size. So we know some players really love that, and we want to make sure that everyone is happy with.
Yeah, I know a lot of people complained about the new book, right? The spell book. Like, a lot of people complained, not everyone, but a lot of people complained they hated the fact that it was taking up their whole screen. And I was like, bro, I open my spell book once, maybe every patch, just to get all the spells from the spell book onto my bar. The fuck up is if I have to go page next, just show me everything on one nice page so I can pick the shit that I need. I like it.
With the new spellbook, having the time to do all that stuff makes us so happy, because we want to keep the classic WoW look, even though it looks modern, but it still feel WoW, and that's really important for us.
Morgan, earlier you mentioned you want to empower players to play the way they want to play. How is that going to be approached in the new feature Delves?
Yeah, so, like we've discussed, Delves are really bite-sized content, really targeted on those players who love progression in the outdoor world and maybe aren't so excited about
looking
going
forward to
into
this,
group
bro.
content or queued content.
I'm looking forward to this.
Gave us feedback on is that they really wish that there was a way for these to be a bit more difficult and maybe give them a bit of a challenge too. Delves, while the rewards might end at tier 8, so that the item level that you're getting stops there, the difficulty tier goes to 11. And when you reach that difficulty, there will be a hard mode version of Zekfir, which for people who might be familiar with some of those solo challenges like the Mage Tower of the past, this will be a new solo challenge for players to really, try to tackle over time. And we imagine this is something that will take quite a bit of effort and
that's as cool as shit, actually.
To defeat Zekfir at that difficulty. And waiting for you, if you're able to do that, is a really awesome, unique, kind of voided out version of that customizable delve mount that you're going to be rewarded with very early on in your delve progression.
Can you talk about the different varieties of delves?
Yeah, so with delves, there's 13 delves in total, and something that we really wanted to focus on was to make sure that each delve had multiple variants, right? So while there's 12 delves that you'll experience and be sent to, a couple in each zone, every time you zone in, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just some small tweaks here and there, like, the spawning changed a little bit, or maybe there's some traps that look a little bit different. The actual objectives are changing. Sometimes the way you traverse through the delve
it's customizable.
Changes. Maybe you're going to start at the end of the delve this time and work your way backwards. So we wanted to make sure that these different variants were really distinct with each new delve. And we also wanted to make sure that, like I said earlier, with progression to be a large part of
expansion,
this. So
bro.
there's a couple different aspects of that. For one, the Great Vault, which is something that a lot of our raid and PvP and Mythic Plus players are familiar with, is going to get an outdoor row with the War Within. So the loot that comes from delves, we wanted to make sure that...
Oh, great. Do you guys know that I missed out on 6 possible upgrades throughout the whole of Dragonflight from the Vault? Because every once in a while, like, you guys know how I play WoW. I play the story, I don't really do dungeons, I don't do raids, any of that shit. But every once in a while, I would get this sort of thing that would just be like, oh, let me go do some Mythic Plus. And then I would do Mythic Plus, and so I'm obviously going to get some stuff from the Vault. And then I just completely forget about the Vault. I've never opened the Vault. Ever. Like, there's just never been any... I've never gotten, I think, an item from the Vault, actually. Because I just keep forgetting to open the fucking Vault and to look. Holy, from what I've experienced, unless they've changed that, if you miss the item, it's gone. Like, I've never been able to get an item again. I could probably go check. There might be, like, fucking 6 items waiting for me in the Vault. But, like I said, I don't do it enough, so I keep forgetting to open the Vault. To be fair, it was about halfway into the expansion that I figured out where the Vault is. So that should also be mentioned. I don't go to the Vault ever for anything, so to open it twice in a row or some shit because I didn't open a Vault for weeks and then I came back. It stays until next reset. Okay, so I will definitely not have it because I haven't played any Mythic Plus. I've just been questing. I'm basically doing the world events at the minute. But late now, though, they won't be upgrades. Oh, everything, I think, will be an upgrade for me.
While it was bite-sized content, that doesn't mean it can't be really rewarding, right? So if you're able to, work your way up and defeat level 8, which is where the loot kind of caps out at, your Great Vault will actually reward you with items that are higher item level than you would get out of like a Mythic plus 10 end of run chest. So it's really, really good loot.
Really
and we
important.
want to make sure that you're using that gear that you're in along the way to work through the different delve tiers and finally take the fight to Zekvir.
That's a bit. I'm not trying to pick fight here, but if the gear you can get from the Vault is Mythic plus 10 gear, doesn't that like almost force players that maybe don't want to do Vaults now to must do Vaults? That feels like, I don't know, that feels like the opposite of what the Vault should be, which is completely optional. You don't think so? I mean, if it's Mythic plus 10, how is that not forcing players to do the delves? Because you have the opportunity to get a Mythic plus 10 item in your Vault. Mythic plus in raids is better. This is plus 10. So if you're someone that isn't necessarily at plus 11 or 12, you might need to do it. Another option, they're going to spam Mythic dungeons anyway. Yeah, but Chris, let me explain it to you guys this way. The thing that killed Torghast was the fact that players felt forced to do Torghast. Not Torghast. Torghast itself was fine. The problem was the second you forced players to do Torghast, that became a problem. The issue is that players are, humans really, are hyper, we're little optimization bots. All humans are like this, right? We're little optimization bots. And we will do absolutely everything to optimize. Like, just nom, 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 let's go. I'm optimizing the shit out of everything. To the point where we will optimize the fun right out of a fucking game. If you allow humans to do this, they'll optimize the fun right out of something. And then they'll complain, this isn't fun. And you're like, well, it's not fun because you've literally fucked it for yourself, but never mind that. So if you create a potential for this system to be abused, people might abuse it, right? And then they'll complain, we hate delves, fuck delves, even though technically they don't have to do delves. They could just spam Mythic Plus because the gear is so much higher in the delves than what they probably get. Let's say they're Mythic Plus 7. They feel like they must do delves because that's where they're going to get the best gear. So that's the only thing I'm worried about. I'm not saying that it will happen, but every time this has happened in World of Warcraft, players have figured out a way to make that unbearable for themselves.
And by extension, Xalatath as well, which also gets us into feeling like delves should be a big part of our endgame story as well, and making sure that they're paying into this narrative.
Epic Thulu, it doesn't matter. So it does not matter at all. When you say, when I say forced, and you say, wait, but Torghast was forced because you had to do it in order to get your legendaries. Whether the game forces you to do something or the way you play and the way that is acceptable to play, the community forces you to do something, it's still force. It doesn't matter who is applying the force. As a developer, you have to be cognizant of the fact that this could create force. And that's the issue, right? Michael Zali, baby. Alpha Sigma, how you doing? Again, I'm not saying that it will happen. I'm just, the plus 10 feels like high. It feels high. But then that's also reliant on what Mythic Plus level do you do before you get a plus 11, right? Or you get a much better piece of gear. Because at that point, would it be better to run delves or would it just be better to spam Mythic Plus? So if the balance is correct, then it doesn't matter at all, right? If the balance is fine, so it's actually much better to run Mythic Plus than it is to run delves. But I haven't played, so obviously I can't know. And I don't think they should dive too much into min-maxing beyond determining if it's optional. But if I ever want to raid or do Mythics, I'd be better prepared for them. So, what's the death counter? Timo Gotham, how you doing? The death counter is me forgetting to turn off my Elden Ring death counter. I should probably just turn it off, sorry. I keep forgetting to deactivate the death counter. But yeah, it's for Elden Ring.
Of Xalatath and all of our epic heroes that we're experiencing along the way. Something else that we added in the UI for delves is, there's now a whole tab that exists for delves. That
how you doing, bro?
The adventure journal, where you can see Mythic Plus and see your seasonal journey there. Now when you go to the delves tab, you can find the Great Vault from there. You can also see Bran, who's your companion. You can change his spec and see kind of the progression there. So lots of fun UI additions and improvements that have made delves that much more fun.
The team has also made significant changes to Mythic Plus dungeons. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, so actually, not only is Mythic Plus getting some changes, but also the core progression of dungeons has shifted quite a bit. So if you've been playing Dragonflight Season 4, you might have seen that Mythic 0 has actually gotten quite the facelift. Something that we have noticed in the past is Mythic 0 was great for like 2 weeks of an expansion, and then nobody really needed to do it anymore because they had just progressed into Mythic Plus. So with the War Within, a Mythic 0 will be the equivalent of what, if you haven't played since Shadowlands, Mythic 10 might have been.
Well, I've read on Twitter, a lot of people are not happy with this change. There's been a lot of high-level players that's been warning that your average player will not enjoy Mythic Plus this expansion, because apparently some of the bosses are fucking incredibly hard. They just ridiculously hard. I don't know. I have not done it yet, but that's what I've heard at least. So we'll see. And Jordan, I will say on that point where you say at some point it is on the player to show restraint, that's never happened in the history of the world. Never. As a developer, part of your job is to think about the potential ways in which players will feel pressure to exploit certain systems, and then try. You're never going to be able to do it perfectly, but try to create it in such a way that the player isn't forced to exploit it, because there is such a thing as community pressure. If you want to keep your raid spot, you will do this. Right? So now it's not really about restraint. It's about the fact that I must do this thing or else I don't get to raid, right? So it's sort of like, as a developer, you have to keep that in mind when you're designing the game. But again, it's all about balance. You can have this, just as long as the balances work out, you're good. You can't please everybody all the time. Twitter, who the fuck? Well, to be fair, the people on Twitter aren't like bad people. It's like high-level raiders that's just been talking about the Mythic Zero or the Mythics and the Mythic Plus, saying it is ridiculously hard. The boss mechanics are very, very difficult, and then the Mythic Plus just makes it even harder to do. So I'm not sure, but that's what I've heard.
So it's quite difficult and will be equally as rewarding. But we wanted to capture that audience of people who loved that feeling of the mega dungeons where there's still progression, but also there's no timer, right? So if that was something that maybe put you off from Mythic Plus, this is
there you
something
go.
That you can
What
still
Henvy
do
said
with your
there.
friends, and hey, you can run AFK if you need to in the middle of these. But for Mythic Plus itself, we really took a huge step back and wanted to do a major affix refresh. We have gone through multiple iterations of that on the beta. We got a lot of feedback from our first iteration of it and have really pivoted significantly since then.
It was kind of neat because we had some players that said, we really like the direction of these affixes, these I don't know about, and then other players that felt the exact opposite. I'm not sure about these, but I really like this direction. And really what it helped us crystallize was we had multiple groups of players that wanted different challenges out of the same Mythic Plus system. Historically, affixes have been a one-size-fits-all approach to challenge and variety. But it was kind of a cool moment. Morgan came to the gameplay engineering team and was like, hey, we got this feedback. We have this idea for making affixes target different level ranges rather than applying to the entirety of Mythic Plus. And the design solution ended up being pretty elegant for engineering to implement. It was like this beautiful confluence of events where we were able to turn this around within, I don't know, 2 weeks or something like that, and get the full revamped system back on the beta for players to test.
Yeah, it was really awesome to see kind of that all come together so quickly. So, what players...
Alex, so affixes are separate debuffs and buffs, or sometimes buffs, not really buffs, but let's say buffs. Separate debuffs that apply to the dungeon. So you have the dungeon as the base form, 3 or 4 bosses and a bunch of mobs, but then you have affixes on top of the dungeon that will make the dungeon harder or change the way you have to approach the dungeon. So where without the affix, you could just pull the whole dungeon and kill all the mobs alongside the boss. Thanks to certain affixes, this will be a death sentence. You cannot do that, because the mobs will buff each other or the mobs will do increased damage or whatever the case may be, right? So ultimately, it sort of changes the way you approach the dungeon. And these are what affixes are. The shoulders on my pally were dope. If those who are rating +12, +17 found this a bit insane, I don't know how the people who are doing less than +10 will feel about it if they stay like this. I have no idea, right? So all I know is the change that I love most about the Mythic Plus system is that all affixes disappear after +10. That was the change that I thought was the best, because then it really does just become this, how high can you go? Just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until there's nothing left, right? And you literally just can't do the damage anymore. I like that because there's sort of a purity then in how high can you push, and you're not being screwed over by certain weeks over other weeks. And so I think it's better. Or +12, it's one of whatever is the top margin. That's the one where it stops. So the affixes stop.
I've seen now, and what will be going live with The War Within Season 1 is a version where Xalatath actually plays a major role in the affixes.
No, but it was 10. When did they change it to 12? In that post that they just showed there, it was anything after +10. So the affixes would only scale to 10, and then it would go from there, all affixes disappear. So it must have changed since the original blue post. Because I remember we covered the blue post. I even made a video on the blue post.
From the beginning up until level 12. And it's very much one of the goals we had to make sure that the story plays a part in all of our endgame content. So we really wanted to kind of achieve that by having her kind of show up in your Mythic Plus dungeon and maybe throw some spells at you and mess with you.
You know, we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of World of Warcraft this year, and if you're coming back from a break or if you're a completely new player, just learning the dungeons can be daunting on top of affixes and things like that.
20 years,
the sort of
bro.
granular way that affixes
20 years of this fucking game occupying my life.
them in the way that they want to be.
That is nuts. That
Something
is
that
the
we added
full...
in Dragonflight, which is the follower dungeons, are great for that because you can have NPC companions, which are not real players, playing with you through the dungeon. And let's say you just changed to a new spec, you want to be a healer now, and I really want to try that first before really going to a dungeon with new players.
We know that players in dungeons often are afraid of trying out new specs, and with hero talents, there's different flavors of new combat for people to try out.
that might actually
provide a way.
That might actually be it. It might have been with the Xalatath stuff. So that was early on, but I don't think we ever covered the Xalatath stuff in a separate video. I just looked over the Xalatath stuff. But I remember the Mythic Plus difficulty changes came as a separate thing, and they had all the graphs of how this will change now and what will happen. But then it was still, from what I remember, that was still the normal affixes, just like the stuff that you get. So it might be that I'm remembering. If my kids grew up seeing us play WoW, they used to fish for us. Dude, it's been 20 years of WoW. Like, holy crap. 20 years of my life playing this game, breathing this game, and really for the last, 7, 8 years, it's been what I make my living off of. This is nuts.
Way for you to just go in and feel it out and not be too concerned about how you're impacting other people.
Approachability has been mentioned a few times. How are we applying that to PvP?
Yeah, there's actually a new feature that I am personally going to play quite a bit, where you're going to be able to experience essentially rated battlegrounds. It's called Rated Battleground Blitz, which is a smaller number of players, and you'll be able to earn conquest and all the awesome rated PvP rewards while playing battlegrounds. Because we know there's a ton of people who love battlegrounds, but the jump into arena sometimes might be a little bit scary. That is a much more smaller experience, and each little mistake counts for a lot when you're in an arena. Where in a battleground, there's a lot more going on. Usually they last longer. There's objectives. So we really are excited about that new feature. I know I have done a ton of, I know the community calls them YOLO RBGs, where you can just do RBGs, don't worry about voice chat, you just kind of go in and play. I always love running into those, so having this feature will kind of take that place for me. So I'll be able to earn my conquest early on in the season. I know we mentioned the great...
How long do you think before people complain about the RGBs being too hard because no one's focused and everyone's just doing their own thing? And this sucks, Blizzard, you have to fix this.
Great Vault quite a bit earlier when we were discussing this. We actually got a lot of feedback from our PvP players that they don't love having to have the Great Vault be such a big part of their itemization and gearing journey. Not only does it add some potential randomization, right? Like maybe first week of the season you got a weapon and I don't, and that kind of can create some imbalance there. But also, like we're talking about accessibility, it can also cause problems where, maybe you're a couple weeks into the season and you just now want to get into PvP, but there's no catch up on the Great Vault. So you can feel like you're permanently behind on PvP, and it's maybe the barrier to entry is a little too high for you to get into that. So not having that in the Great Vault actually solves a lot of problems for us, giving players more agency and how they're...
Dude, this is a huge change. And for anyone that might not understand it, if you're a PvEer in World of Warcraft, random gear has always been a thing. All gear is random. You don't know what you're going to get. You might get it, you might not. So the Vault being somewhat random and you're not entirely sure, yeah, it's great, right? Who gives a shit? For PvPers, RNG has never been a thing. One of the key things about PvP is targeting specific gear pieces early so that you get the biggest boost in damage, and then filling out the rest of your gear slots as is needed. So by introducing the Vault, you are just creating this nightmare fuel for a PvPer where they might want this specific item, but this item will just never fucking drop for them. So removing this and taking PvPers back to this idea of, dude, you build your own gear the way that you want to build it. Because remember, fundamentally, the overwhelming majority of PvEers play to gear. PvPers don't play to gear. They gear to play. So that's the fundamental difference in that approach. Now, that's not to say that there aren't PvEers that also gear to play. Of course, I was one of those people, so I know that they exist. But there's very few people who play PvP to gear. Actually, I don't know of many, because most of the PvE gear would be better than the things that you can get in PvP anyways.
Rewarded, and also we have much stronger catch-up on things like our conquest currency for PvP players. So we think that will be a big step forward for that audience, and hopefully, inspire some people to check out PvP in the War Within.
Raiding is an integral part of endgame. How is the team approaching raids this tier?
Yeah, so Nerebar Palace is going to be an epic experience. Nerubians galore in there, and one of the cool new features that we're introducing with War Within is to play through the raid, or at least experience the ending with Queen Ansurek solo. So we wanted to make sure that for people who were really engaged in that story at the end game, but maybe didn't want to go into queued content or don't have a whole group to go into the raid with, they'll still be able to see that epic finale. Something else that I think is really fun, there's a lot of variety in play.
Do you guys think we're killing Queen Ansurek? Because somehow I doubt it. Somehow I just don't see them doing all of this work to introduce Queen Ansurek and then for her to die in the first fucking patch. I highly doubt it. I feel like there's so much potential with her story that killing her first patch is just not gonna work. And yeah, there is obviously that as well. Like Denathrius was another one of those characters that they wanted to kill early, and then they realized, wait, but players fucking love this character. We can't kill this.
Player skill across all of our player types in the game, and we have a lot of difficulties for them. But even within a single raid, there can be a lot of progression that you're experiencing. And with Dragonflight, we added a new item upgrade system where you could upgrade some of your gear. But some players also found that they might not be able to quite get over that hurdle on one of the maybe the end boss or something that comes as the penultimate boss. So we're adding a new quest that will unlock.
Metabolic, there's a big difference between Razagaeth and Queen Ansurek. So Razagaeth was introduced, but as a way to introduce the incarnates. Razagaeth herself was never really put in the spotlight as the character of the expansion. She was literally just the introduction to what would become the far more important incarnates. Queen Ansurek got her own animatic. She got her own storyline, basically just focused on her and her decisions. I feel like that would be such a waste if you literally just remove that first patch.
About a month into the War Within, that every week you'll get a little bit more powerful. It's kind of reminiscent of like Hellscream's war song back in Icebound Citadel, but you'll have to kind of earn your way through that progression. So not only is there awesome more that one thing that comes as the penultimate boss, so we're adding a new quest that will unlock about a month into the War Within, that every week you'll get a little bit more powerful. It's kind of reminiscent of like Hellscream's war.
Oh, dude, this is such a fucking mega W. This is such a mega W. So what this does, Jason, thanks for the $10, dude. Really appreciate you. Thank you, sir. You're far too kind. Zal is a Naru. We figured it out. Really appreciate you, bro. Zolvar probably. I mean, if everything else is tied to Warband, this is probably it as well. But here's why this is mega. Do we have anyone in chat right now that has ever raided, like, on Mythic level? And you get to about the week before the next patch, or not even the week before next patch. You're busy grinding away. It's about a month and a half into the patch. And you're on this boss, this sort of boss. You and your guild is just knocking against this boss. You can't get past it, but you're close. You're figuring it out. And then suddenly Blizzard nerfs the boss into the fucking ground, and now you're just shooting through it and you don't feel that sense of, we did it. We did it, right? This is us. What I like about this change is, first and foremost, it's a quest which suggests you can take it or you can't, or you don't have to take it. So if you and your guild decide, look, we're not going to do increased XP, we're just going to go as is, then you can do that. But if you and your guild goes, no, we're going to do this, you can do it incrementally to the point where you take down a boss, and if you struggle a little bit, just a few more weeks and you'll be strong enough to take down the next boss, and so on and so forth. So it's a lot more gradual, which also allows for guilds to say, all right, guys, we've got 10% increased damage. We're seemingly doing well now. Let's relax for a little bit, see how far we can get. This makes so much more fucking sense than Blizzard's old approach of just nerfing bosses sort of like a month and a half after the expansion, after the patch goes live. I love this.
Or song back in Icecrown Citadel, but you'll have to kind of earn your way through that progression. So not only is there awesome gear to be earned as you progress through the raid, but we wanted to make sure that for people who might take a little bit longer, there's some more progression along with just the gear.
That buff's applied throughout your warband, right? It's not just on the character.
Yeah, that's another really fun thing.
There you go.
Like, that was something that maybe would have just been applied to a single character, but in War Within, that buff is across my whole
Can you turn off the buff?
warbands.
That's cool.
While we are talking about raids, I would love to bring it up, the self-highlight option, which I'm a huge fan. You can highlight.
Or is it? No. I hope it's not like a quest that it just automatically goes up. So if you struggle, you can just accept it and then you get plus 50 DPS or plus 50% damage. I hope it's sort of a thing where you can do it every week, but then you can just turn it off if you don't want the XP buff.
Yourself and persist that. But now you can even have an icon on your head that nobody can take from you. So that is awesome. You know, for players, I'm included, that I cannot find myself.
Also pretty big. I know for people that don't raid, probably doesn't matter, but as raiders, this will help. If you can have your own icon and no one can take it from you.
In the whole chaos of a raid boss or even Mythic Plus, there is also another option that's called Show Silhouette when Obscured. If you have that on, there is a silhouette.
This looked really cool.
Of your character between that pillar. Let's say it's a pillar, so you see your character there.
I always call those like the flag boss or the tree boss. Or it's like,
This is really cool.
That's really cool, Laura.
You know why this is so cool? There are so many places in WoW where the environment looks beautiful, but it is so annoying to fucking play with. Because your character is just behind a wall and you can't see shit. And it's like, bro, what the fuck? Then you have to zoom in and you play like fucking first person almost just so that you can play. This is cool. Why though? It's only visible to you. Silver Coppin, so that you can see your character when you're just doing a quick glance. So it's especially helpful in stacked scenarios. So in raids where you oftentimes have to sort of loosely stack in one position, sometimes you'll see something on the ground, but because you're just very quickly scanning and there's like fucking 10 people around you, you don't necessarily see that you are standing in this thing. This marker allows you to go, oh, let me just move out of this quickly. You know, because you can see the marker, so you know exactly who you are in this giant maze of just players in front of you or around you.
And I love that. And, you know, not only those cool options, but there's so much more to explore in the War Within. And I'm really excited for our players to come on this journey with us. Both players who have been with us all through Dragonflight, as well as players who might be returning.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this look into endgame content, and we look forward to seeing you in Khazalgar.
I'm looking forward, bros. I am looking forward. Everything they said, I'm excited for. Everything they said, I'm hyped for. I haven't felt this much hype for a WoW expansion in a long time. Not gonna lie. It's been a while. I think the last time I felt this amount of hype was BFA. Like I was excited for Shadowlands, but I was apprehensive after what happened in BFA. I mean, Shadowlands killed all of my hype. Like, all of it was gone. I remember watching the cinematic for Dragonflight and just being like, we'll see. I don't know if this is going to be good. But now, holy shit, boys. I am so fucking ready for this. I am so ready for this. Prophet, I don't know if I'm definitely not where I used to be. Like that I'll admit. My hype is cautious insofar as they've shown only good things thus far. I've not seen a single thing in this expansion where Rurikon, how you doing, brother? There's not been a single thing in this expansion that I can point to and be like, that thing's going to break the game. Not a single thing. And that has not been true in World of Warcraft for a long time. Dragonflight actually was the first expansion that I could also see not a single thing that will break the game. I didn't see anything that really hyped me for the game, but I also didn't see anything that would break the game. You go into Battle for Azeroth pretty much from the beginning. Every single one of us was warning about anima and the way anima gear is going to work. You go into Shadowlands, same thing. You knew that Torghast was probably going to be a fucking problem. You knew that the way they wanted to do the legendaries was going to be a problem. And you knew that these things can break the game. Dragonflight came and it was just sort of like a bog standard safe expansion. Nothing too crazy. This one comes with, there's hype, but there's also nothing I'm looking at going, this is the thing that could break the game if it doesn't work. Because there's nothing forced. There's not a single thing in this expansion that I can look at and say, I'm going to be forced to do this, aren't I? Whether I want to or not, I'm going to have to do this thing. Instead, what there is me for the first time in a long time looking at this going, I can't wait for delves. I don't want to do dungeons. I don't want to raid, but I do want to delve. And I'll be happy to just delve alone on my own, having some fun. So I'm super excited.